Cool, well, thank you so much for inviting me to come and talk to you today. As I say, my name is Elliot, and I absolutely love wildlife, but I think I probably even more love telling people about wildlife and trying to get them as excited as I am about it. So I work for an organisation called Citizen Zoo. Can we have a little slide clicky thing? Amazing. Can we go one more? Thank you, great. So I work for an organisation called Citizen Zoo. And what that is, it's a relatively new organisation. And we use the theme of rewilding. What is rewilding? Rewilding means a lot of things to a lot of different people. But to us, it means two things. Firstly, rewilding people. So trying to reconnect people to the natural world around them. And then secondly, rewilding our local environment. So making our parks a more biodiverse space, trying to create this ecological functionality that we've lost in so many spaces. So trying to put the pieces of the puzzle, that big complex ecological puzzle, put the things back in to try and make it a more resilient, rich, sustainable ecosystem. So these are the sort of things that we're trying to push and trying to do it very much in London and specifically in Kingston, which is where I'm from. So if we just do another click. So I think the first thing I would like to say is a massive thank you to the National Park City movement, because it really has helped provide a narrative, a sort of a claw for us to get hold of people's ears. Right? When I can go up to a teacher or somebody in the street and say, you now live in a national park city, that then you can see their ears perk up and be like, ooh, what's that mean? And then I can then try and jump in with some wildlife facts or something that they might not have otherwise been receptive to. So it really is a fantastic thing, and I'm really so pleased that it's gaining momentum and becoming what it is becoming. As I say, I live in Kingston, which was the bottom over here, which if you don't know, we're down here in southwest London. I like to call it the Florida of London, the way it sort of sticks out like that. But yeah, so if you one more click. So just to give you a bit of click, please. So just to give a bit of info about Kingston, it's about 33% open green space, 11% of it is open green space, which doesn't sound like that much when you look at the whole sort of London, which is about 49.5% open green space and blue space. But strategically, Kingston is quite an important space when you look at the sort of wildlife areas around it.
That should work.
Amazing, thank you. So to the north of Kingston, you've got Richmond Park, obviously an amazing biodiverse, rich space. To the west, you've got Home Park, which is an equally awesome space. To the west, we've got Wimbledon Common, and then to the south, we've got the London Greenbelt. So we're surrounded by these really big sort of green spaces. And then if you look down the centre of Kingston, sort of over, you can't really see it too much on the map there, but there's a green spine that goes down through the heart of Kingston, following a chalk stream called the Hogsmill. Chalk streams are internationally rare, so that in itself is quite a cool thing. But that green stream, that green stretch there acts as a wildlife corridor, and as our gardens can. And obviously animals don't respect human boundaries, which we could probably learn something through at the moment. But trying to make our gardens and make our green space, our Kingston more connective, and so species can travel through it more easily. That is something we're trying to achieve in Kingston. And the thing we also try and look at doing is using the wisdom of this chap. Does anybody know who it is? So this is one of my absolute heroes. He was a writer, an environmentalist, a conservationist in sort of the first half of the 20th century, a chap called Aldo Leopold, and he helped to sort of redefine how communities can, how you can actually redefine the word community. So when we think of the word community, we think of the people around us, the human connections, whereas he interprets it as a much more whole-encompassing thing, where you just don't think about the people, but also the wildlife and stuff like that. So he said amazing things like this. We abuse land because we see it as a commodity belonging to us. When you see land as a community which you belong, we may then begin to use it with love and respect. And I think that is a really powerful thing. If we view the community around us, so all the sort of different, all the life forms that we're so lucky to be surrounded by that can enrich our daily lives, I think that really can bring out a whole wealth of well-being for us. And especially at the moment where we're living in what is called a hyper-connected era, apparently three-quarters of our children spend less time outdoors than your average prison inmate at the moment. And people are going to spend up to 5 years of their life just staring at a phone screen. So there's a lot, we are really not connected with the natural world around us. And I think if we can try and address that, we know the psychological and physical well-being elements that we get from engaging with nature. So that's something we really have to try and address. And I think the natural world, by making it exciting and accessible, and the national park movement is a really good way of trying to combat this disconnection. So as I say, a lot of our work is in Kingston. Kingston's got about 176,000 people living in it. And when people think of Kingston, they normally think of the busy high street, the shopping centre, the bars, that sort of thing. They don't normally think of the wildlife. So I was like, how can we try and open people's eyes to the wildlife that's in Kingston? So that was a sort of conundrum I sort of had in my head. And I think one way that I thought we could try and do it is this. So if you go to Africa or something, you go on safari, and you go and look for the big five. Well, I think Kingston actually has a wealth of wildlife, so I thought, why can't Kingston have its very own big five? So that's something I go into schools and I go into all sorts of places to try and raise awareness for specific species. And I use this big five narrative sometimes. And this is a lovely drawing that somebody called Hannah Shines drew for it, of doing it, a talk at a school in Kingston. And it was a really good way of engaging people. And because we're sort of coming up with the big five, I can change it every time I do it. So I haven't actually defined what my big five is because I like to mix and match it each time I do it. So some of the species that I love to take hold of is, for example, the kingfisher. So kingfishers, who's seen a kingfisher here? Raise your hands. Oh, amazing. The most beautiful birds, right? So the Hogsmill River, which is the one in Kingston, has about 14 pairs of kingfishers living on it. But when you start learning about these creatures, they just become more and more magical, more and more just amazing. And just trying to get that narrative out there is something that I think really can draw people's interest in. So when you tell somebody that the feather of a kingfisher isn't actually on its wing, it isn't blue, it's actually sort of see-through, and it's the way the light travels through it and the way the feathers are sort of locate into each other or attached to each other, that's what gives you the blue collar. I think that's an amazing fact. A kingfisher has to eat its body weight in fish every day to stay alive. That, I think, is an amazing fact. But one of my favourite things about kingfishers is that you can tell if they have young or not, sort of, by looking at the way in which it holds a fish in its beak. And if it's holding a fish by the tail and the head is dangling down, that typically means that it's got young, because it's going to go and present the smooth head of that fish to its young, so they're a nice, easy meal for them to have. If it's got the tail dangling down, it means it's probably going to eat him itself, because the young won't want to eat a dangling tail. So the more you learn about these creatures, the more fascinating they become, and the more excitement you can tend to draw up. And stag beetles, so southwest London is globally important for our stag beetle population. And again, if you tell people that these creatures can live from 3 to 7 years just living in deadwood as a larva, and they only come out for a few weeks on a warm summer's day, and that is their life cycle, that again is pretty amazing. And some people are scared of stag beetles, think, oh, I'm going to get bitten by it. But no, when you tell them that they've actually sacrificed their jaws to create these incredible antler-type structures that they used to tackle each other, or the males do at least, they've sacrificed the ability to sort of eat, and that's why they can't live that long. They can only drink, so they can't bite you. So people shouldn't be afraid of them. And then you tell people about bats. So London's got about 11 species of bats recorded in it. And this is one of my favourite bats, like a Dorbenton bat, which has these incredible feet that are like big sort of fishing nets that sort of swoop along the river, just above the waterline, scooping up bugs and feeding and eating them on the wing. Amazing creatures, and they can eat up to about 3,000 bugs in one night. Truly important creatures. And then the peregrine falcon. Again, who's seen a peregrine falcon? Oh, great, because I think London's now got about 44 pairs of peregrine falcons living in it, the world's fastest creature that's ever lived on our planet. What an amazing thing for us to have right on our doorsteps. And just this year, we had peregrine falcons nesting on one of the tallest towers in Kingston, and the London Peregrine Partnership put up cameras so you can watch that whole process, and it's absolutely amazing. Just bringing these species into people's lives and just saying, look at this amazing world that's around us that people just don't normally see. And then badgers. I love talking about badgers. People don't really associate badgers with London, but Kingston itself has got badger sets all over it. So you go out on a moonlit night, you typically can watch one of these guys plodding around. And again, it just adds to that level of excitement of just the life that is around us. And I do think that excitement is growing. I really do think people are now entering an era, a phase where I actually want to hear about this and learn more about this. So bat walks is something we like to run quite a lot. So the first time I tried to run a bat walk, I walked around our local town and put up a few posters and said, oh, we're going to do a little bat walk. I had my 10 bat detectors in my little bag, and I show up, and about 200 people were waiting for me to come. And I was like, wow, I haven't got 200 bat detectors to go around. But what that did show is that people are genuinely interested. If you give them the opportunity to engage, they want to learn. And yeah, the positive feedback we got from these bat walks is absolutely amazing. And this is something we can do quite easily, quite regularly, and just make people more aware of the world around them. And we can use that enthusiasm to then try encourage them to act, right? To try and do volunteering work. As David Attenborough says, how are people going to care about things that people just don't know about? So we then try and do lots of community volunteering. So this is an example of some volunteering days that have been run in the past in Kingston. And again, we get really good turnouts. And it brings the community together. You look at that photo there. This is just a rainy day on a Saturday morning. We've got teenagers, we've got retired people, we've got all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds just jumping in this river to help restore it. So it really is a really good way of building the community together. But we thought it was great to do sort of volunteering projects like that, but we thought, how else can we try and really mobilise people to do some really pioneering conservation work? So one of the exciting projects that we're running at the moment, and we've got, Phil's one of our volunteers in the audience who's involved in this project. But we've trained 60 volunteers in Kingston to see the world through the eyes of a water vole. So water voles actually went extinct in Kingston in about 2014. But we want to try and bring them back. So we're working with a conservationist called Derek Gow, who's like a top-notch conservationist who pioneers beaver reintroductions and water vole reintroductions across the UK. And he's helping us do this project in the borough. And yes, we advertised these sessions. They sold out. Well, it didn't sell out because they were free, but they became very full very quickly. And so we trained 60 people, and then they've gone out and they've walked across the Hogsmill catchment, and now we've traffic lighted it and sort of put it in. We've worked out where good habitat is, where bad habitat is, and where average habitat is, and that will now inform our conservation actions moving forward, where we need to sort of improve areas and do all sorts of stuff. And it was great, and we've got some real good local enthusiasm with this. We even got Sky News to cover it. It was amazing as part of the State of Nature report, so that was a really cool thing. And we came up with a name for the project, which I quite like. It's called Get Involved, so quite cool. Another project we're doing is we fundamentally believe that nature should be accessible for everybody. So in Kingston specifically, there's very few opportunities for people who have access issues or in wheelchairs, and they can't really get out and maybe explore nature, the natural world around us as much as we can. So there's a nature reserve that's been neglected for over 30 years, and we're currently restoring it for disabled access, wheelchair access and stuff, and that's a project that we're really getting our teeth into at the moment. That's what it looked like when we started, and it'll look something like that diagram, hopefully, when we're finished. Another project, this is the one in Tolworth. So Tolworth's got this incredibly big nature reserve, about 50 hectares, and nobody knows about it. And part of the London National Park City Festival, we ran an open day there. We had about 200 people come throughout the day and get involved. And it was amazing for them to explore this huge, vast area that they just didn't really know existed. It was on their doorsteps. And now we're trying to try and propose ways in which this can be a truly outstanding nature reserve that can engage people and really be a wealth of biodiversity. And the last thing I want to say is this summer, the summer that's just passed, we put together an event called Wild Kingston. And this was at the Rose Theatre, which is the biggest sort of theatre in Kingston. And we sort of gambled. We thought, well, we'll rent it out and we'll see what happens. And we'll just put on an event about about featuring the local wildlife that Kingston has to offer. And we sold out the Rose. So we got 800 people came to listen about local wildlife. And that day we showed a video that we'd made. And this is something I want you all to do. Next time you get the opportunity on YouTube, if you don't know what sort of, you're a bit bored, I don't know, type in the Hogsmill River into YouTube, and you'll see the documentary, the sort of 10-minute film that we have made about our local river. Griff Rhys-Jones narrated it, and it's a really nice way to sort of open people's eyes up to the natural world around us. So these are the sort of things that we're trying to do. Hopefully it gives you a bit of an idea of the sort of ways in which we're trying to really pioneer community engagement. And yeah, thank you for listening. Cheers.